Hey, good afternoon. Happy Friday, June 21st. Mark Milam here, your mortgage professional. Let's talk about what happened this week. So relatively flat week, not a lot of movement with mortgage rates. We didn't see any big spikes. We didn't see any big declines. But we saw continued weakening data, and that's somewhat encouraging on the inflation front. Let me show you a little bit about what I'm talking about here. So really, this goes back to yesterday. We're looking at housing starts came in under expectations, building permits the same, jobless claims a little over expectations, and it's interesting to see the housing starts and the building permits coming in low. We're seeing continued declines in those categories, and when you go back year over year, substantial declines, upwards of 9 to 10%. In declines compared to year over year numbers. Why is that happening? Well, builders aren't charities, right? So they're in this to make a profit. And they start looking at the cost of land, you start looking at the cost of materials, you start looking at the cost of money. What does it cost to borrow? It's just not adding up for builders. And builders also perceive and watch economic data, and they know there's some softening out there, and they have memories, right? They'll go back to 2008, 2009, when many of them were left holding the bag. And they're just not going to be put in that position again. So we're starting to see builders take their foot off the gas a little bit as it pertains to new construction. Let's see what other data we got this week. There wasn't a ton. Retail sales came in under expectations. If you take out automobiles, actually came in negative. We saw some contracting in retail sales earlier this week. All of that pointing to the economy cooling. So why did we not cut interest rates last month? And I kind of want to chat about this. So I want to talk about why I don't think the Federal Reserve gave any indication about interest rate cuts last week, and why I don't think they're going to do it in July either, but why we may be setting up nicely for a potential Fed funds rate cut in September. Let's talk about why. So when you start talking about the year-over-year inflation number, you have to know that that year-over-year number is really just 12 months added up to create the year-over-year number. And there's something called the base effect, and I've talked about this before, the base effect that's about to come in play for the Fed. And listen, the Fed was wrong about transitory 2 years ago, right? They were wrong on their call that inflation was transitory 2 years ago, and they missed it. They were behind the curve, and you do not want to get behind the curve on inflation. The Fed does not want to be embarrassed again. And that's why I don't think they're cutting quite yet, because they know what's about to happen over the next 60 days. And let me show you what's about to happen. So as we start looking at the overall inflation number, I'll try to blow this up a little bit. When you start looking at the overall inflation number, you're really adding up the last 12 months worth of monthly data. So here was May, came in super low in May, right down around 0%. And then we go back, here's April, March. There's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. These are the past 12 months that make up the year-over-year inflation number, which is now hovering around the low threes, or 3.25%. Now we are about to drop off 2 pretty low months over the next 60 days. We're going to be dropping off these months, and these months will now be our 11th and 12th month. So you can see these are pretty low readings, 0.2 each for June and July of 2023 that are about to go away. So unless we come in at this kind of level for the next few months, we are not going to see inflation go down. Matter of fact, we may start to see inflation tick back up. And if you're the Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell, the last thing you want to do now is signal rate cuts and then have those 2 low months fall off and then see inflation go back up. That would be the perfect storm for them. They are not going to put themselves in that position, even if they think inflation is moderating on a month-to-month basis, and even if they think labor is softening as well, which I believe that they do. But they know what's coming with the base effect. They know that's just the next 60 days, and they do not want to get caught cutting the Fed funds rate and then having inflation tick up on them simply because we're dropping off 2 low months. Look at what happens, though, when we get past that. Look at the next 2 months after that. These are high readings, right? 0.5% month over month, almost 0.4% the next month. That's the perfect time to start looking at cutting, because ultimately you should be showing some decline in inflation with those 2 months. And that should set up fairly nicely for a September rate cut for the Fed. The only thing that plays against the Fed for a September rate cut in that circumstance is that we're getting awfully close to the November election, and the Fed does not want to be seen as a political instrument. So they may just sit on the sidelines and see how the election plays out before they begin cutting. but don't be surprised to see a September rate cut on the table. Until then, though, I don't think we're going to see any big moves from our Federal Reserve. If I can be of any service to you over the weekend, don't hesitate to reach out, mark.milam@highlandmtg.com. Have a good weekend.